an engineer just wants to play with the tools themselves, or they want to try an experiment. They don't have access to the big tool for whatever reason, and they just want something that on a personal budget that they can use. And so we've been collecting a number of solutions that are really low cost or free that you can do real signal power integrity analysis with. And so our boot camp is going to be signal and power integrity with free or very low cost tools.
Hi everyone, it's Judy Warner. Welcome back to this week's Ecosystem Podcast. Today I'm joined by Professor Dr. Eric Bogatin, who is here to talk about 4 different activities he's involved in at the upcoming DesignCon, which will be held in Santa Clara, January 30th through February 4th. If you do plan to attend but haven't signed up yet, please use our exclusive promo code, which is ECCO, for 15% off all pass types, or you can get into the exhibit for free. Without further ado, let's jump into our conversation with Dr. Eric Bogatin. Hi, Eric. So good to see you, my friend. I'm getting excited to meet up with you at DesignCon.
Hey, it's always good to chat, and at least we can do it virtually now, and in a couple of weeks, we'll be live together at DesignCon.
Yeah, it's our once-a-year reunion, I feel like, for the whole industry. So looking forward to it. But that is exactly why I wanted to get you on as part of my pre-game DesignCon series, because I know that every year you have a lot going on. So why don't you share with us what you got going on this year at DesignCon?
Well, every DesignCon, it seems busier than the next. And attendance, I've noticed, has been going up quite a bit. I think the last one was the largest attendance there's been. So it's really the one chance of the year for me to get together with a lot of my colleagues that I don't see other than virtually like this. And as the audience grows, I get to see more folks that I talk with or work with over the year. This year is no different than any of the previous ones. We got a lot of projects, a lot of presentations going on. Let's see. So I have to say the one that I enjoy the most doing is the Chiphead Theater. And so every year we do it on the show floor in the Chiphead area, and I try to channel my inner Ron Popeil. And Ron Popeil is a very famous marketing guy. He's very famous for the rotisserie grill. His tagline was "Set it and forget it," and it wasn't that he was selling a rotisserie grill. He was selling the most succulent roast you've ever tasted, or the crispiest duck you've ever had. He would sell the benefit, not the feature, and that's how I learned my marketing. And he did the pocket fly fisherman.
Totally
was the other
remember
one.
that.
Yeah,
we're dating ourselves here.
I
will
love
tell
that.
You,
yeah,
I know. Well, and they sold like crazy. But when I spent 16 years in sales, and they used to always teach us, all the sales guys like Ron Popeil would say, "Sell the sizzle, not the steak."
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Yeah, and that's what I try to do at Chiphead. That I like to do demonstrations. And I love that adrenaline rush of, whenever you do anything live, you never know if it's going to work this time. Cable's not going to be connected, or something broke in transit or something. And so there's that adrenaline rush of that live demonstration, and you have to remember what's going where and why and all the knobs. So it's a lot of fun for me, and I love being able to show really cool effects demonstrated quickly with great instruments and products. And so this year, Chiphead, I'm going to do a presentation on a technique that we've developed in our group at CU to measure the bandwidth of scope probes. You can do scopes and probes. And it's a little different than just using a VNA to measure the bandwidth of an interconnector cable, because it's connected to a scope, and you have to have the whole system there. And so it's a technique we've developed using a really simple, low-cost, very fast pulse generator that my buddy Leo Bodnar over in the UK has created, and it's like $100. Really great square wave generator with like tens of picosecond rise time signals. So it's a great reference, and we're going to use that. I'm going to show you how to use that to take measurements with the scope, take those measurements and do a Fourier transform with free tool, quick software tool, so that you can plot literally a transfer function of the signal going in and what you measure in the scope, and get to measure the bandwidth of that whole system of the probe interface, the cable, the scope amplifier, the bandwidth, all that stuff with the scope. And so I'm going to demonstrate that technique, and we're going to look at how the shape of the connection between the signal and the return of the 10x probe, how that affects the bandwidth of the measurement. And we'll do that live with, my buddies over at Tel and LaCroix are going to give me one of their 12-bit gigahertz scopes. We'll use that, and we'll have some probes. And so I'll do a Ron Popeil imitation there of showing how easy it is to do these kinds of bandwidth measurements and the insight it gives you in how to do probing. So I've got that one going. And then something new for this year, our group here at CU, the High Speed Digital Engineering Group, we're going to have a booth, and we're going to show off our curriculum, basically, and kind of a thank you to our sponsors. We have a number of sponsors, so we'll be letting the world know about all the help they've given us in developing our curriculum. I don't think any DesignCon attendees are going to want to get a master's degree with our program, although everyone is invited to it. But maybe they'll have kids, or maybe they'll have young engineers coming in, or that they talk to that might want to know about this program. There are only a few in the world that offer graduate training in signal integrity and power integrity. So this is a really unique curriculum that we've developed. So we're going to be showing that off. And as part of that, our group is going to be doing a boot camp on Tuesday, a whole day boot camp. And one of the areas that I like to focus on is low cost tools and solutions. That if you're a large company, you can afford $100,000 simulation tool or $250,000 network analyzer, and you have access to state-of-the-art equipment. And we use those in our curriculum as well, because we want to train engineers with the same tools that they're going to use when they go to industry. So we have all that as well in our curriculum. But there's also a segment of the industry that I hear over and over that an engineer just wants to play with the tools themselves, or they want to try and experiment. They don't have access to the big tool for whatever reason, and they just want something that on a personal budget that they can use. And so we've been collecting a number of solutions that are really low cost or free that you can do real signal power integrity analysis with. And so our boot camp is going to be signal and power integrity with free or very low cost tools. And so I've got a couple of my students, my graduate students, that are going to do some presentations on some of the tools that they're learning and techniques they're learning in our courses. And then I'm going to do a couple of presentations. And so it'll be a chance for attendees to get a feel for what are some of the free tools out there they can use themselves to solve real signal integrity problems. So I'm gonna show off some of the free tools available from Tel and LaCroix. We're going to talk about Quicks. We're going to talk about using a $600 network analyzer to measure really low impedances for capacitors and other PDN components. And we're big fans of some of the ANSYS tools, and they have a free student version of their full tool. And one of my students that just loves the tool and is expert using it is going to show off how to get started using it, a couple examples that we can do with it. So we got that. Oh my gosh, let's see what else. We've got, we have a number of instrument test and measurement vendors that have been very gracious at donating equipment to our program. Tel LaCroix has given us a lot of stuff. Rohde and Schwartz has given us a lot of stuff. And they're doing a one-day seminar in a separate room of different solutions for solving signal integrity, power integrity, EMI kind of problems. And I'm going to do a little workshop for them showing how to use a 2-port VNA to do very low impedance measurements of capacitors and how to do the analysis using a freely available software tool. So I'm going to do a little presentation with my buddies at Rohde and Schwartz. And then, and of course, we've got a technical talk that we're going to do about, again, low cost measurements of dielectric constant in circuit boards, kind of a spin-off on the Intel's Delta L method. We've got a version of it that uses fewer touchdowns, fewer measurements, simpler analysis to get the results. So, gosh, full program, lots of stuff going on. I'm tired already just thinking about what we're going to be doing there, but looking forward to it. It's a chance to share what we've been doing here, and a chance to talk with other either colleagues or customers out there.
Well, because you and I have known each other for a while, Eric, the things I appreciate that I like to share with our audience is that on the staff of CU Boulder, and Eric, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I remember you telling me, I was telling you because I had a lot of experiences with different universities, and I was saying, why aren't other people teaching sort of this more practical curriculum? And, I talked to UCSD and other large universities that said, well, yeah, we're never going to teach that because there's not research money. And your light bulb went on and said, oh, because like 10 of our staff are from industry. And so I love that you've been able to do that and also get the support of the industry, because I think you're putting out some of the most practically skilled engineers. And the other thing is, I think better than anyone else that the secret weapon in the toolbox is engineering judgment, intuition, and wisdom. That can be used on a variety of tools that you can learn to wield.
Yeah. That's really the first step before you use the tool is, it's my rule number 9. You have to know what to expect. And that's where engineering judgment is so important. And, they say that in the hands of an unskilled artist, even the best paintbrush and paints, you're not going to create a masterpiece. That it really takes that judgment of how to use the tool, how to interpret the results that is so important. That's one of the things that we teach. But your other note about why it's not so popular in other universities, I think it's a combination of two things. One is it's hard to get funding for signal integrity research. And so we have kind of bootstrapped our program through the gracious donations from some of the large companies out there. And without their donations, we would not have been able to create the curriculum that we've got and start training engineers. And I really think that is becoming a huge industry problem. That I wrote an article in SIJ, an editorial last year, the year before, about how we are facing a national security crisis in the lack of U.S. citizens that are skilled in not just engineering, but specifically in signal integrity. And I would love through advertising. I never pass up an opportunity to get on my soapbox and say how important it is for companies that have a strong need for U.S. citizen engineers to consider funding scholarship programs for U.S. citizens that want to go through either 4 years of an undergraduate engineering or a couple of years for master's or even PhD. I really think that's the only way we're going to reestablish fill that hopper of more U.S. citizen electrical engineers. And I think that's a really important thing going forward.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. That would certainly be a way. And I know there's some things going on in Capitol Hill also on the manufacturing front right now.
Yes.
Of course, there's the CHIPS Act. I think the U.S. engineers, the government started with CHIPS Act, but now they're seeing all the ecosystem behind that, and they're starting to say, oh, shoot, well, it's boards of manufacturing, and it's assembly, and it's materials, and, the engineers. So I think some is starting to trickle, but I think the level in D.C., and as also the government makes investments, as well as companies, I think, hopefully we'll get more robust in that area.
Yeah.
You mentioned SIJ, and why don't you give our listeners a quick, I know they've got a huge, of course, they're sponsors of our podcast. We partner together a lot because I think they put out some of the best technical content in the space. And you are the technical editor. So why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about your role and the magazine and about the big annual upcoming edition of that magazine that they definitely should be tapping into.
So I was just trying to think back. I think we started SI Journal about 6 or 7 years ago as really an industry, it's completely free. it's paid for by advertising and sponsors, and it's really we saw a need to have curated content in this whole area of signal integrity, power integrity, EMI. That the problem in the industry right now isn't that there's not enough information out there. The internet is full of content on this topic. The challenge is trying to sift through it to find the gems that are going to be valuable for a design engineer or a hardware engineer in order to help them in their design. And so we established the SI Journal. It was Carl Scheffers and Pat Hindle and Janine Love at the time. And then they asked me to help join them to kind of spearhead the origin of this industry journal, kind of aligned with Microwave Journal, which has been around for more than 30 years, in the same context, to have a one-stop shop for design engineers to go to learn about state-of-the-art and educational background, foundation building about these three areas of signal, power, and EMI. So we've been around for about 6-7 years. We have a editorial advisory board of industry experts. All the content that we publish as technical articles is reviewed by the editorial advisory board. So it's peer reviewed, it's curated, and we try to engineer just high value content there. Anybody can go to the signalintegrityjournal.com site. Everything is always free. If you sign up as a subscriber, then you'll get a weekly pushed email with the table of contents and a link to some of the more popular articles that are there. We do a bunch of webinars as well. Everything is free. It's all recorded. It's all available. So it's a huge database repository of archived high-value content. And we try really hard to have a balance of, here's state-of-the-art stuff. I mean, we have some articles about designing 224 gigabit PAM4 systems, and we also have tutorial kind of a foundation building about what is characteristic impedance and what are S parameters, how to use S parameters to characterize an interconnect channel. So it's a very wide spectrum of design value that is posted and available for free for everybody. And I try to write a technical paper, once a month or so. One of the things that I've been doing is I read a lot of papers. I listen to a lot of webcasts. There's a lot of crap out there, and I feel like I try to sift through a lot of that to identify those that I think are really high value, and I usually will post a link or a comment about them. And so the running column I have is, I've kissed a lot of frogs. Kind of the metaphor of, you have to kiss a lot of frogs, and one or two of them will turn into a prince or princess. And so I've kissed a lot of frogs, and I try to identify only those that I think are the worthwhile ones. So I waste my brain cells so other people don't. Yeah, right. So our readers don't have to do that.
That is a good public service for the industry, Eric. I promise you, and we've talked about this before, that you see, of course, Chat GPT is becoming a thing, and it's only getting messier, not better. And so more and more, you and I share. I mean, at the ecosystem, we're starting to put up blogs and other things too. And I get it peer reviewed by engineers and stuff, because I don't want to put more junk out there.
Yeah.
It's originally written and it's not slapped together by Chat GPT. So it may not be repurposing junk, and because of the drive of content marketing, unfortunately.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, I think one of the topics we should cover in a future discussion is about how a lot of authors out there use ChatGPT to generate their content, and when it is about factual things, ChatGPT gets its information that was trained on the internet. There's a lot of wrong stuff there, and ChatGPT doesn't know what's right and wrong, and so it regurgitates what's out there, and it makes shit up. And the phrase the technical term that I have to start using instead of that is, it hallucinates, and it will just make stuff up. There are a lot of famous cases where ChatGPT has done that. So you have to be very careful in a lot of the content out there that's generated, and I mean this in the most loving way, but it's generated by marketing folks that don't understand the technical content. They rely on ChatGPT, throw it some seed questions and terms, they get the content and they post that content, and a lot of it is wrong. It really needs that filter by an expert in order to curate it. And so I think that's going to be a growing problem in the industry. I see that in my students' papers and their lab reports. I can tell instantly if it was written by ChatGPT. Partly the style, and partly because sometimes it's wrong. And so it's great for writing fiction and poetry and creative kind of things. But I think there's a real danger about trusting it too much for content that's factual.
I couldn't agree more, of course. And I would like to do that podcast, actually, because I've seen more and more junk. And part of what we're aspiring to on the ecosystem is to be not only an author, but a curator and an aggregator of known good engineering talent. I mean, information, and also share things through SIJ that I know are peer reviewed. So it's like a safe zone. If it's here or if it's on SHI, it's not going to be junk. And hopefully somebody besides somebody who is wielding expertly. But I'll tell you where I talk to a lot of engineers, and they tell me where it's awesome is writing code, bits of code.
Yeah.
And they said it's pretty good and really saving them a bunch of time. And they do have the ability to check it manually. So that I hear has been really helpful for engineers, but not so much.
I think you're absolutely right. I think that's one of the killer apps, writing code, as long as you are confident in your test vectors to test the code, because you can tell instantly whether it's right or wrong. But it's really good because it remembers the syntax that I don't anymore. So writing code, writing anything that's fiction, creative is great. Poetry is fantastic. If you ever want to have fun, type in a few leading questions and say, write it as a poem with 25 lines, or write it so a 5-year-old will understand it. And it is phenomenal what it comes up with as a sophisticated word completion tool. It is absolutely phenomenal. But technical content, I have considerable doubts about it.
I share that with you. Well, in the opposite of bad content, Signal Integrity Journal, I want to leave this with our audience before I let you go, and I know you know a bit about it. I know every year this time around DesignCon, they put out their print edition. That's their biggest edition of the year. And why don't you share, what people can expect from that and maybe how they can get a copy?
Yeah, so normally SIJ is online. All the issues, all the content is online. Every year we do a print version that usually consolidates is always new content from industry experts. And then we print out copies. It becomes an ebook. So we give it out, the print copy, we give it out at DesignCon, and it's available on request. But if you just want to see the copy, you can also download it as an ebook, basically, as PDF, as a complete ebook. And we have all of the previous, I think, 6 or 7 years of print versions available on SIJ as an ebook. And so you can click and download and see all the previous ones. I always write an editorial for the print issue on something that I have felt is important for that year. I did one about I mentioned the national security crisis of not having enough U.S. citizen engineers. I did one about the importance of free tools and what companies can do to help stimulate the industry and students with free tools. And this year, I did an editorial on kind of what we were talking about, the impact that generative AI is going to have on our industry. Not just how it will help with design, but also generative AI systems are one of the important driving forces now for electronic design. For the chip vendors, NVIDIA and AMD, Marvell, they're all developing chips specifically for the AI industry, and they are putting new demands on interconnects and systems because of the the latency requirements and the parallel processing requirements. So this is a little article about how generative AI is one of the, I think it's 6 or 7 most important technology revolutions that we are in the middle of. And then we have half a dozen other feature articles by industry experts on different topics. We got one from my buddy Gus Pinella over at Molups on 224 gigabit PAM4 systems. What are some of the design challenges there? I think Bert Simonovich has a feature article in there. I've got one with one of my students about how do you evaluate the accuracy of a 3D field solver tool that we all use in system level simulation. And there are a couple other feature articles there. So it's packed full of high value content, really useful for all design engineers from novice to expert. And if you come to DesignCon, everybody will get a copy of the print issue, and then anybody can go to the SIJ website and download the ebook version of it.
Perfect. That was a perfect pitch. And I didn't know a lot about a lot of that, so thank you for that. By the way, for our audience, if you haven't signed up for DesignCon at this late date and you still want to go, they were gracious enough to give us a promo code ECCO for the ecosystem, and that'll give you 15% off all passes or free attendance to the expo. And along with CU Boulder and all the flagship companies that you see there, I will also be there in booth 645, and I will have some of those SIJ, the hard copies there. I've already talked to Pat about getting some of those over there. So, well, Eric, I don't know how you do it. I know you have students to help you, though, so that's one thing that helps you do so much. But thank you again so much for coming on and sharing what you're up to at DesignCon and all your wisdom. And I look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks, and I hope some of our audience members will as well.
Always a pleasure hanging out with you, and look forward to seeing you live and everybody else live at DesignCon in a few weeks.
To our audience, thanks so much for listening this week. I trust you enjoyed this conversation with Professor Dr. Eric Bogatin. We hope to see you at DesignCon. If not, we'll see you next week on the podcast. Until then, remember to always stay connected to the ecosystem.